Does Caleb Williams want to be a Washington Commander? His most recent Instagram story might suggest he might want to reunite with Kliff Kingsbury here in the nation's capital. And speaking of Kliff, today I'm going to be breaking down the offensive and defensive scheme staples that you can expect to see from Kliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator, and then Joe Witt Jr., the new defensive coordinator hired by newly hired head coach Dan Quinn. And then finally, I'm going to tell you whether or not Ben Johnson straight up screwed the Washington Commanders with how he handled the interview process. But before we get into today's Commanders news and rumors, help us beat the Cowboys Report today in our like battle, because producer Coop, he's a big-time Cowboys fan. He works really hard on that Cowboys Report channel of ours, and he said there's no way
you guys are getting more likes than us. I guarantee it.
I disagree. I think the Commanders Report crew here, we know what we're doing here. We like to beat the Cowboys. So do me a favor right now. Shut this guy's big, fat mouth. He's wearing a Rangers t-shirt today. He's a huge Cowboys fan. Let's prove
World
Coop
Series
wrong
champs.
today. Okay. Fair enough there, Coop. But let's beat you in the like battle today. Click that thumbs up icon to get today's show started. All right, so let's get into this one here. Caleb Williams and the rumors of Caleb potentially being the target for the Washington Commanders after the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury as the new head coach, who, of course, was the quarterbacks coach there in USC, and he worked very closely with Caleb every single day there with the Trojans. So really, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what this is going to end up being here with Kliff Kingsbury, because it seems to me like if you go out and get a guy like Kliff Kingsbury and you bring in literally the same exact offense that Caleb Williams played in college, that just seems to me like they would really love to have number 13 there with the Trojans play for the Commanders next year. And this is what Caleb Williams put on his Instagram story after Kliff Kingsbury was announced as the offensive coordinator. It says, "My dog, congrats." And of course, that's a picture of Kliff Kingsbury in an edit there with his little zip up with the Commanders logo on there. So obviously, Caleb knows Kliff Kingsbury is going to Washington. And of course, Caleb Williams himself is a Washington, D.C. native. So all this stuff is starting to pile up. All these things are starting to pile up for reasons why Caleb Williams would want to become a Washington Commander. Now, the big question moving forward is whether or not Caleb is going to force his way to the nation's capital, because, of course, the biggest roadblock to Caleb becoming a Commander is that the Chicago Bears, not the Commanders, hold the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. And now let's talk a little bit about whether or not Caleb is actually worth trading up for here from 2 to 1. So let's go over the scouting report here. The pros for Caleb: incredible arm talent. The playmaking ability is about as good as I have ever seen in a college prospect. The pocket presence is the best that I've seen in a college prospect since Kyler Murray, and I do think it's even better than Kyler's was back when he was coming out of Oklahoma a couple of years back. He's also a plus runner. He's very creative. He's a very smart runner. He knows how to work with blocks and find running lanes. And then his work ethic is absolutely heralded there at USC. It's been that way all the way going back to high school. I mean, a guy this good doesn't get that good for no reason. So you don't have to worry about the work ethic. And then also the cons here is that what I'll say here, the two things that you're going to hear about Caleb Williams is the ball security. He does fumble the ball a little bit too much. He likes to kind of run around with the ball in just one hand, which definitely makes it more susceptible for fumbles, but also the hero ball tendency on his tape. There's definitely opportunities to hit open receivers in structure in Lincoln Riley's offense on his tape last year, and then he just decides to not throw it to those guys to try to make a bigger play outside of the pocket. And many times he was able to make a play like that outside of the pocket. But the question's going to be, heading into the National Football League, can his next offensive coach and play caller kind of corral that playmaking instinct that he has to where he can still get the ball out on time and in structure if it's there, but then if he needs to unleash that playmaking ability, is he going to be able to kind of find that balance moving forward? I think he's a generational prospect, and I definitely think that he's worth the number 1 overall pick. But you know what, guys? I don't think it's the end of the world if the Washington Commanders end up drafting either Drake May or Jaden Daniels either. I both have top 5 grades on either one of those guys. I think they've played in a lot of shotgun spread systems, so I think that they would be perfect fits for Kliff Kingsbury's offense here. So it's definitely not a make or break situation for the Washington Commanders to go out and get Caleb Williams and trade up. But my take on this here is that he's the best quarterback prospect I have evaluated since I've started doing this back in 2018. All right, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. The arm strength, the playmaking creativity and instincts, the ability to run with the football, the pocket presence and footwork from within structure, and then he clearly shows on film that he can play within structure. The only question is he going to be able to do that and kind of prevent himself from throwing too many interceptions and making too many big mistakes in the National Football League? And if I'm the Washington Commanders, I am 100% calling the Chicago Bears to see what it's going to take to trade up from number 2 to number 1. Now, I'm not going to give up too much because, like I said, I like Drake May and I like Jaden Daniels in the system as well. But if you can get a deal done like this year, okay, so you give up the first-round pick this year, number 1 overall, you get that in your system. Then you give the Bears the number 2 overall pick, the second-round pick for this year as well, number 40. That was originally the Bears pick there for the Montez Sweat trade. And then you go and give them an additional third-round pick in 2025. This is the offer that I would give the Chicago Bears in exchange for that number 1 overall pick to move up just one spot and take a generational quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams. Bring the hometown kid home. Bring him into a system that he already knows all the verbiage in. I think Caleb Williams could be one of the best rookie quarterbacks in the National Football League if the Commanders can end up getting him. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade? Type A for accept or type D for decline. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show, so YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question with an A or a D. So now let's talk about the new play callers here in Washington. Dan Quinn made pretty quick work of getting his OC and DC hired. For the offensive side of the ball, it will be Kliff Kingsbury, former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals and USC quarterbacks coach. And then for the defensive side of the ball, he poached the secondary coach from the Dallas Cowboys, Joe Witt Jr., to be his defensive coordinator. And yes, Joe Witt Jr. will be calling the plays, Dan Quinn announced today at his introductory press conference. So let's go over the offensive and defensive staples here. Let's start with Kliff's side of the ball, the offense, or of course he's going to be bringing the air raid to the NFL once again. Of course, you see this in college with teams like USC with Lincoln Riley, with Mike Leach when he was still with us. Of course, Kliff Kingsbury is one of the main air raid guys around football. What it really is, guys, is that it's a lot of shotgun and it's a lot of spread concepts. Like they have 4 receivers on the field, 1 running back, put the quarterback in shotgun, so the defense kind of has to declare what they're doing in terms of coverage. Really makes things easier on the quarterback in that regard. It also creates more space for a potential rushing quarterback. So Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, maybe even Justin Fields could be a really good fit in this scheme. In terms of what you're going to see from the run game, because you're in shotgun, you're really only going to see inside zone. And then when you're trying to throw a changeup, you're going to do counter runs to kind of go off of that. So expect to see a lot of inside zone and counter on the Commanders film next year. Also lots of spread concepts like we said. And then when Kliff was the offensive play caller there in Arizona, they led the league in screen passes every single year. They like to use that as kind of an alternative to their run game, right? Short passes, screens on first and second down. Expect to see a lot of those in this offense as well. Then you get to the defensive side of the ball here with Joe Witt Jr. And, of course, Dan Quinn is going to be implementing his scheme. He's not going to be calling plays, but he's going to be quite involved with the game planning process. So the philosophy that he's going to be bringing in is a hybrid Seattle 3. You got to remember, Dan Quinn got his roots there in Seattle with the Legion of Boom, and it's highly aggressive, all right? Lots of blitzing, lots of aggressive blitzes, and they're hunting turnovers. You've seen this in Dallas over the last several years, man, where they're trying to turn the ball over as many times as they can. And you know what? If they give up a 20, 30-yard chunk trying to get an interception, they're going to take some of those losses if it means they can get a couple turnovers per game. Also, lots of press man coverage is what they ran there in Dallas. It'll be interesting to see what kind of corners and safeties they bring in here, because right now the Commanders are not built to run a press man system, so they're going to have to overhaul this secondary a little bit, in my opinion. They'll throw in cover 3 match like they specialize there in Seattle with Richard Sherman and company with the Legion of Boom, and then they'll also throw in Tampa 2 on second and third and longs to kind of keep things fresh in terms from a schematic standpoint. And it puts a big focus on tackling because there's a lot of one-on-one matchups. You're putting corners out one-on-one on the boundary with receivers. And if it's like a wide receiver screen out there, you have to put the receiver on the ground. There's not going to be a lot of safety help. It's going to be very aggressive. You're going to be trying to get interceptions, and that's very exciting here in Washington because it's the exact opposite of what we were doing with Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera before, where it was more of a bend, don't break philosophy here in Washington. Now, coming up here, I'm going to tell you about Ben Johnson and how things kind of got nutty there before he ended up saying no to the Washington Commanders. And there's some NFL execs out there that aren't taking too kindly with the way that he approached this whole process. I'm going to let you know what I think about this here in just a second. But first, if you're thinking about getting tickets to the big game in Vegas on Sunday, then use today's sponsor, Game Time, to help getting those tickets to the big game. We know how expensive they are, just a little bit easier. For all of our listeners, if you use code Vegas100 on the Game Time app, you'll get $100 off to help get your butt to Allegiant Stadium on February 11th, this Sunday, to watch the NFC and AFC champions and the San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs duke it out for the Lombardi Trophy in the biggest game of the year. And not only is Game Time offering you that $100 off to the big game, but they are also the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. Game Time boasts a lowest price guarantee on all tickets to any event, so it's the only ticketing app you need on your phone. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are also sent directly to your phone, another great feature, so you never have to dig through that pesky email to get your tickets. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code NFLChat for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code NFLChat for $20 off, and make sure you use code Vegas100 to get $100 off to the big game. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So let's talk about Ben Johnson, who, of course, was the favorite to be the next head coach of the Washington Commanders. And then all of a sudden, things came crumbling to the ground. And according to some recent reporting by The Athletic, some NFL execs and some people around the league aren't taking too kindly to the things that Ben Johnson, the way that Ben Johnson, pretty much the way it went down is that the Commanders were on the plane to go talk to him in Detroit, and then he gives them a text message the day of the interview and says, sorry guys, not interested. And there's a lot of people that did not like the way Johnson kind of handled this situation. He's getting a little bit of a bad rap around the league where he's saying no to all these jobs, even though he's never been a head coach in the National Football League. So you know what, man? Let up some steam down there in the comment section. If you think that Ben Johnson absolutely disrespected and completely stiffed the Washington Commanders here, type FBJ down there in the comment section. You know what, man? Dan Quinn, I really hope this guy blows Ben Johnson out of the water here over the next 10 years. I hope this team becomes world champions yet again, and Ben Johnson's going to be sitting on his ass on his couch watching the Washington Commanders win the damn Super Bowl after what he pulled. All right, now let's talk about somebody that is also not going to be on the Washington Commanders coaching staff in 2024, and that is former OC Eric Bieniemy. Today, new head coach Dan Quinn at his introductory press conference said EB will not be joining the staff for new OC Kliff Kingsbury here in 2024, which of course makes him a free agent. And you know what, man? I think that's probably the right call, and I think if you're Eric Bieniemy, you want to kind of find your next opportunity and kind of run with that. So best of luck to EB, and it definitely is a shame that it didn't work out here in Washington. That'll be it for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for all of your support. Again, help us beat Coop today. Help us beat the Cowboys Report. Click that thumbs up icon, and make sure you click that subscribe button because we got a bunch of great Commanders draft content coming your way later in the week. Tomorrow, Senior Bowl recap. Wednesday, Commanders mock draft. You're not going to want to miss it. Click that subscribe button right now.